The Dharma, incomparably profound and exquisite, is rarely met with even in hundreds of thousands of millions of kalpas. We now can see it, hear it, accept and hold it. May we realize the true mind of the Tathagata. And there's our wonderful new guard dog. Actually, he's not exactly a guard dog. He's a rather sweet but large dog with a big bark. Is defending us right now, as is his breed instructions, apparently. Today is the first day of this August 2020 7-day sesshin, mostly by Zoom. Here in the Zendo is Dale over here and myself, and that's it. Socially distancing, wearing masks for chanting and so on. And I hope each of you is also staying equally safe and will remain safe and free of this amazing virus. I'd like to share with you first, oh, the lamp, please. Some of the words of one of my favorite people, Huang, or as he's known in Japanese, Obaku. It's not quite, yeah. Who was a Chinese master in the Tang Dynasty, that famous period in Chinese Zen, or Chan, where there were so many amazing masters came forth, so many deeply realized people. And out of circumstances not so different from ours. There were plagues, there were wars, there was violence, there was a terrible disruption in the culture. And yet, out of that sort of crucible of pain and suffering came deep awakening. And that also is so much closer for us now because of exactly what we're dealing with. We can't do things we're normally accustomed to doing. Our life is very much different because of these restrictions, because there are many things that are happening that's fallout from the whole COVID-19 pandemic all over the world. People who had plans to travel, even to visit family, can't do that. They can't even visit elderly family in nursing homes. They can't be with their loved ones when they're dying. It's a very, very different situation. And it's bringing up a lot of things for many, many people. But this gives a tremendous fruitful opportunity to work through those things. And of course, we cannot really work through them most effectively through thought and ideas and talk. There's a certain amount of progress we can make in that realm, but we can't get at the very root of our challenges without going into our feeling, sensations, many of which we've chosen to shut down because particularly growing up, we may not have had the most ideal circumstances in our lives. And even sometimes people who do have ideal circumstances in their lives. And I think now of a dear friend of mine whose family is beautiful. The parents of this person were wonderful human beings, kind, compassionate, generous, and the older members of the siblings were also very deeply compassionate, and yet this person came into this life, and you don't have to believe this; it's not necessary, but. I know this person personally. I've known this person for quite a long time, and I trust very much what the backstory is, which is that centuries ago, they murdered a child. It was out of desperation, and it was a child that was going to be severely handicapped if it grew up. And the fact of causing this person's death has created ramifications in lifetimes after that. Horrible, horrible, horrible experiences of lifetimes. And when this person started doing Zazen, memories came up of these events. And bravely, this person relived them. I don't think there was a choice. Relived them through the Zazen and came out the other end free from allowing the experience to be fully felt. Now, this sounds frightening, but in my own experience, it only comes to us to the degree that we are able to handle it. And those of us who are doing Zazen in this sesshin are pretty mentally, emotionally healthy. And if there are things that are hidden, things that we have chosen to shut down when we were children because they were so painful and we didn't know what else to do with them, because we certainly didn't want to feel them, if we allow ourselves to open to, first of all, the numbness that is there, the kind of blahness, two-dimensionalness that is there as a result of shutting down. Because unfortunately, and I realized this personally very directly, you cannot shut down part of your mind without shutting the whole thing down. In other words, you can't shut out painful experiences and feel joy and the rest of your life. It's extremely difficult, if not impossible, because the numbness, the habit pattern of shutting down prevents the positive feelings from coming forth as well. And those of us who do Zazen will sooner or later have the opportunity to choose to allow ourselves to walk into the physical experience of the energy that was buried and is still there, vibrating and challenging us. And when we do this, it is amazing what can happen in positive ways. So let me start with Huang Po. And he talks about this pure mind that we are. Your true nature is not lost in moments of delusion, nor is it gained at the moment of enlightenment. It was never born and can never die. It shines through the whole universe, filling emptiness, one with emptiness. It is without time or space and has no passions, actions, ignorance, or knowledge. In it, there are no things, no people, and no Buddhas. It contains not the smallest hairbreadth of anything that exists objectively. It depends on nothing and is attached to nothing. It is all-pervading, radiant beauty, absolute reality, self-existent and uncreated. It is a jewel beyond all price. And that is who you are. And now I'd like to share from Albert Einstein, who was onto something as well. The same thing, actually. The scientist's religious feeling takes the form of a rapturous amazement at the harmony of natural law, which reveals an intelligence of such superiority that in comparison with it, the highest intelligence of human beings is an utterly insignificant reflection. His feeling is the guiding principle of his life and work. The true value of a human being can be found in the degree to which he has attained liberation from the self. The true value of a human being can be found in the degree to which he has gained liberation from the self. A human being is a part of the whole that we call the universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings, as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical illusion of his consciousness. This illusion is a prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for only the few people nearest us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living beings and all of nature, and to let go that image of self that prevents us from doing that and from experiencing what Huang has spoken of. How to do this? Well, there's a little vignette that I recently saw in a book. A young woman carrying a violin was lost in New York City. And so she approached three elderly women waiting for a bus and said, "How do you get to Carnegie Hall?" And the women in one voice said, "Practice, practice, practice." And that's it for us as well. How do we reach that amazingness, that spaciousness, that indescribable liberation that exists within us when we let go or forget ourself? It takes practice. It takes faith. It takes ongoing trust that if you keep on doing the practice, and we have this marvelous tool, this extended out breath, the Susok'kan, as it's called in Japanese, that will bring us right to the doorstep where we can open into a deeper, freer experience of reality. This is something each one of us can do. This is something each one of us simply has a sense of. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting in the sesshin. We wouldn't be working hard at practice. And I believe all of you really have been practicing for quite a long time. And that is terrific because it attests to the level of faith you have in the practice. Practice is not the same as learning to play the piano or learning to play the violin or learning to ride a bike or any other things that we learn. Learn how to be an experienced chemist, learning how to be a doctor, learning how to take care of small children. All of these are a clear path to a clear result. As far as Zazen goes, it's a shot in the dark, it seems like, and we're going on blind faith that if we just keep going, even though it may feel at times like we're not going anywhere, or as the brother of a dear friend of mine once told her when he walked out of the Rochester Zen Center Zendo one day and never came back, "I don't know what I'm doing in there, but it wasn't Zazen." Well, excuse excuse me. At any rate, we have to trust. And the thing is, it's a fascinating undertaking. If we allow ourselves to extend the out breath as we are tuning into the body and the sensations in the body, and extending the out breath requires letting go of thoughts and ideas and attachments to anything else. And if we are to extend it to the degree that is appropriate in the practice, and that is its gift, that it is very fast at cutting away attachments. And as we continue, we become unwittingly more clear. It may not be obvious initially. And some of the greater clarity comes in the form of feeling more fully and becoming aware of things that we had hidden away from ourselves. And not to do that. To allow ourselves, if we become aware of something uncomfortable, to open to it, to allow for that openness of possibility, excuse me, which will open a gate. Because if we think we know, or if we're analyzing, which means we're sitting on top of it and looking down and trying to pick it apart, but if we go into our body and open to possibility of what could be revealed through allowing ourselves to experience whatever this energy is in our body, can bring us deeper and continue to bring us deeper and deeper. And there's, we're so accustomed to experiencing or assuming a result at the end of something. We make an endeavor and we assume there's going to be a positive result, or if we're going in the wrong direction, I suppose a negative result. And the thing is that there's no obvious one-on-one correlation of result. However, as we continue on a regular basis to do this practice in this way, with this openness to possibility, and with this extension of the out-breath, which cuts through everything else, so that we have a clear view, increasingly clear view, without any extraneous interference. I guess it's like tuning a radio station into, so you get a really clear channel without any static. Then it's products of increased let-go-ness, increased insight, come at odd different times. You might even be walking down the street somewhere far from doing zazen, and suddenly you'll have an insight. Or you'll be in a situation where suddenly you see it more clearly, and you're able to function more clearly in the midst of it. This is, if you want to talk about progress, this is progress in our zazen. But don't go put notches in your belt. This is really, really, really important. Trust. Because part of that trust is letting go of a need to be accomplished, a need to be the awakened one, a need to be the successful Zen student, a need to be a star, a need to be doing it right, a need to be making progress. And here's something about progress. Many, many, many years ago, when I was living at the Rochester Zen Center, and I was seeing all my fellow Rochester staff members breaking through their breakthrough koan one after another, and not me. And I began to despair. And I went to one of my friends, Frank Howard, actually, who, along with his wife, who had a Kensho experience a little bit later in that same year. And I said, I'm not, how can I do it? I'm not getting anywhere. Everybody else is breaking through and not me. And his response, don't worry, it's all cumulative. I didn't really understand what he meant at the time, but it was true. It is all cumulative. We're walking in the dark, but somehow we're still walking the path, and we're walking it deeper and deeper and deeper without even realizing it. And the things that we are letting go of unwittingly are truly part of the practice, truly part of what will make possible awakening for us. And as far as awakening, this needs to be said, in the old days in Rochester, and I think pretty much everywhere else, and maybe even it's still the case now, there's an assumption that you go and you do Zazen for a certain period of time, and then bingo, you're enlightened. You caught the golden ring or whatever. You got bought the right ticket to get the billions of dollars. But it's not exactly like that. Kala Rinpoche, who was a very, very lovely, deeply realized Tibetan Buddhist practitioner, master really, his talks were collected in a book called A Flash of Lightning in the Dark Night. And that's what he spoke of with regard to an awakening experience. It is like a flash of lightning in the dark night. For example, if you're making your way, groping your way up a mountain path in the pitch black dark, and then suddenly there's a flash of lightning, and very briefly, the path ahead of you is illuminated. That's what Kensho is like. But you have to keep walking it so that further insight takes place, and further and further and further. And here I quote Hakuin, the great 18th century Japanese Zen master who single-handedly resurrected Rinzai Zen in Japan, who had 19 major Kensho experiences. The first one when he was somewhere around 20 years old. I don't remember exactly how old. And the last one when he was, I think, 53. And he also said, and he also had countless minor insights. And it wasn't until he was 53 and had that final Kensho that all, what shall we call it? All the static, all the stress, all the extraneous stuff dropped away. And finally, he felt he was free. Before that, he went through all kinds of things, and his biography, his autobiography, is quite wonderfully expressive and inspirational, because he went through the same things that we're all going through, or have gone through, or are still going through. And in fact, he got so discouraged with his practice at one point that he quit practicing and apprenticed himself to a master calligrapher. He decided he would become a calligrapher instead of a Zen priest. By that time, he was already ordained, but he felt like he was a total failure in Zen. And yet, look what came out of that. he didn't last very long in the calligraphy field. Actually, he didn't even get to a point where he was actually doing anything but training with a master calligrapher. He decided he would never make it as a calligrapher. And interestingly enough, he had done a tremendous amount of inspirational calligraphy. It seemed like he was probably brushing scrolls, or they call them shikishi in Japan. The mounted things are scrolls, and there's an amazing abundance of his calligraphy and his artwork still extant in Japan. If you ever get a chance to see an exhibition of his calligraphy, it's phenomenal. It is phenomenal in its range of formats, different types of calligraphy, and its amazing number of calligraphies as well. So it is important, as we're doing our practice, to have that faith. It's also important, as part of our practice, to dare, to truly dare to walk in to whatever discomfort there is in our body. And I'm not talking about knee pain or back pain necessarily. What I'm talking about is the tug in our chest, or the feeling of depression, or the feeling of numbness, or any of the other kinds of feelings. Sensations, really, is what I mean, not so much emotions. And walking in and with that same openness to possibility. Because if we do that, particularly if we do that in concert with the extended out breath, and not using the extended out breath to block anything, but to maybe bring laser focus to it, is maybe a better way to put it, by allowing everything else to drop away, then it's amazing the kinds of things that we can become free of, and the freedom that being free of those things affords in just how we are able to live our daily life and interact and do our work and live an increasingly fulfilling, deep life. Little by little more clear, little by little more let go. This is what the great masters promise us, and it's a very real promise that comes out of their own experience. And we have that experience potential ourselves. It just takes work and courage. Because particularly as children, when we experience painful or frightening events, and goodness me, domestic abuse and child abuse is basically another pandemic in the United States. It was hidden away for a very long time, and gradually is becoming increasingly known about and taught about. And some very careful people have researched how to work with childhood trauma as adults, and to let go of the negative impact that has had on our lives, and allow ourselves to open to the freedom we have when we're not stuffing something. And this may sound like psychology, and of course it is, but there's a very big fat gray overlap between Zazen and psychology. And one of the reasons why we have had a history in the West of so-called Zen masters, some of them Asian, but not all of them, abusing their students, is because the psychological overlap has been denied, overlooked, felt not important. In fact, in Japan, you're taught to cut all thoughts, cut everything except the mu or whatever your breakthrough koan is. But when things come up out of our past as a result of working on this breakthrough koan, and we ignore or shove them further under the carpet, then we are setting ourselves up for disaster, really, because they don't go away. They just pull our strings from behind the scenes, and we find ourselves reacting in ways that surprise us. We may have a sudden burst of anger at somebody where it's not obviously warranted, but what has happened is that there's been a whole, let's say, shitload of anger stored away, and something happened, some interaction took place that was the straw that broke the camel's back, or opened Pandora's box, and that rage came flashing out and causing a great deal of damage because it wasn't warranted. And yet, if we are able to open to, we don't have to go into the stories. In fact, it's best not to go into the stories, but to feel what it felt like to shut things down. When you're a little kid and you experience frightening things, maybe your parents fighting, maybe an older sibling doing things that are painful or frightening to you, or being ignored. This is actually the biggest cause of damage in children, is when there is abandonment. And abandonment can happen with the caregiver right there. And the caregiver is not engaged with the child, too busy or uninterested. And then the child suffers, seriously suffers. So we can open to how painful these experiences were when we were children, and feel the pain that's been locked in the bodies. And if we feel it sufficiently to the bottom of it, which takes a lot of practice, and here I recommend this book, Focusing, by Eugene Gendlin, Gendlin. Tells all about how to do it. And that actually enhances our zazen. It makes our zazen much more fruitful, much more positive, and helps it go deeper, faster. And to underscore this, all the Zen folks that I know who are also psychologists or therapists of some other type say universally that a person doing Zen practice and doing psychological work is synergistic. It's far more effective than just one or the other. And one of the things about Zazen is most people who come to Zen practice, not everybody, but most people who come to Zen practice come out of a place of suffering. It may be suppressed suffering, and usually it is, because people are usually pretty high functioning. But to allow ourselves to uncover that energy of that, whatever happened, and to allow it to be let go of by being felt, will enhance our zazen amazingly so. And of course, those among you who are scientists, who have come to practice through fascination with quantum mechanics, for example, or like Einstein, which is why I quoted Einstein for you. This fascination with the deeper you go into that science, the more amazing it is, and the more amazing we find ourselves puzzling over, how can this be that? And let me share again Einstein. The true value of a human being can be found in the degree to which he has attained liberation from the self. The scientist's religious feeling takes the form of a rapturous amazement at the harmony of natural law, which reveals an intelligence of such superiority that in comparison with it, the highest intelligence of human beings is an utterly insignificant reflection. This feeling is the guiding principle of his life and work. And a human being is part of the whole we call the universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings, as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical illusion of his consciousness. This illusion is a prison. And that's exactly what the Buddha said. This illusion is a prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for only the few people nearest us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living beings and all of nature. And we would add through Zazen. And it is said that he basically was doing something that we could call Zazen. We could call it Shikantaza, that resulted in his great scientific discoveries. So we have such an exciting time right now, especially because we have so many motivations to find something beyond what we're used to seeing, hearing, assuming, including who we think we are. And that's the first step to becoming free from this self-image. So dive into the practice. Dare to take off the training wheels. And who knows what can happen. Thank you for listening. We'll stop now and recite the 4 vows. And I believe this video will be available on YouTube as soon as we can get it up there. Thank you.